This deck might have been too good for mid-deck Monday. Thanos is back and is doing legitimately well. Now you might say, KM, it's Thanos. Thanos is always good. And to that, I would say he's really not, actually, especially ongoing Thanos, which has largely been, with one notable exception, the weakest variant of Thanos throughout the time that this deck has existed. Ongoing Thanos, especially now, is, I think, a particularly odd choice in the context of the rise in these destroy your opponent's card mid-range decks, which come naturally with a card that is very good against this list, and that is Killmonger. Hence, this list does run Kyera in order to preempt those powerful anti-synergy cards from taking apart your very synergy-focused game plan. Now, what this does is give this deck a legitimate leg up into a lot of the more simple versions of the, say, Wiccan equivalents of those shells. This means that you can compete on power with a lot of things in the current metagame, in part because the overall point ceiling of this metagame is a little bit lower than it was previously after the nerfs to Mr. Fantastic and to the Invisible When First Steps archetype. In addition, being a Thanos deck is actually something that is actively good in matchups against Juggernaut. It is not a coincidence that this deck is being highlighted right now as we talk about all of the ways in which Juggernaut has become a problem in Marvel Snap over the last year or so. Juggernaut is a card that is undeniably incredible as long as your opponent's board slots aren't full. Thanos Ongoing is the deck that is likely to have the most consistent point output while filling up the board as much as you possibly can. This gives it some inherent lack of vulnerability to Juggernaut, plus the ability to sort of back buff lanes, meaning you can fill them up early, then buff them later with things like Spectrum and Blue Marvel, gives you additional invulnerability in that case. Largely, if you want me to make my case for why this deck is actually good, and perhaps too good for mid-deck Monday, it's got a lot to do with the positioning against Juggernaut. Downside, of course, is that vulnerability to Killmonger and the fact that Thanos decks are remarkably inconsistent. You'll note that there is a King Atri here who is playing a role as the 7th Infinity Stone, but basically like the worst possible Infinity Stone. At least he draws a card, but he doesn't draw that card immediately. This is a very reasonably positioned deck that has upsides into decks that are using Juggernaut as a crutch to sort of instantly win games against things that are not filling up the board. Being able to fill up the board, have a reasonable game plan, a lot of power in it, is just a good place to be right now. This deck is a little bit heavy on one-drops. All of the Thanos stones and Ant-Man and King Atri mean that you are very often going to be able to play a ton of stuff and really start making sure that the board is actually full. Ant-Man, of course, an ongoing card, effectively 5 power, very, very solid. Feel free to just deploy him whenever. Having all of these one-drops also means that you do a lot of 2+1s on 3 if you're able to get to Wiccan. King Atri is the worst Infinity Stone of all time, but he's still an Infinity Stone and he still costs 1, so he is in this list, but I don't think you should feel like he's a requirement here. I think you could play something like maybe Merlin or Kate Bishop at 2, just something that does something, or even just go find whatever ongoing you feel like this deck is actually missing. I think largely the card I felt like I was missing the most was Mobius M. Mobius, so I think if you cut him, you probably want to put a Mobius in here. Goliath lives up to his name in this deck. He gets big for very cheap. Just sort of the Morbius of the ongoing archetype, but really used to better effect in a deck like this than in any ongoing deck, because we are going to be playing more cards with ongoings than a non-Thanos ongoing deck. This is sort of the best this guy is ever going to be. Same for Dazzler. Like, if you're a fan of Dazzler, there is not a better Dazzler deck than the Thanos ongoing list. She is very often a 2/8, occasionally a 2/10, depending on the other buffs you're able to deploy. Just a beast mode card. People think of Thanos as a deck that's sort of defined by Mockingbird, right? Like, when you're rolling downhill, you also have this, like, 2/9 thing. You can have another Mockingbird, effectively, in Dazzler a lot of the time, and being able to have that threat of verticality is what gives gives this deck texture and unpredictability in the face of some of the matchups you'll see. Sam Wilson just starts an ongoing card on the board. You're very happy with that. You're even happier, though, with his ability to move those cards around. Sam Wilson on 2 is actually one of the best draws you could possibly have because the other cards are sort of ongoing and you can play them whenever, and you want more information before you deploy your Goliath somewhere or your Dazzler somewhere just to fill your curve. Ideally, those are things you're able to deploy later in the game with more information about where your opponent's big threats are going so you can get the most out of their point total. The other thing that Sam Wilson does, other than being a great 2-drop to play on 2, is this is a deck that very often runs the risk of filling itself up, and Sam Wilson's moving shield can really help alleviate some of those risks against decks like Clog, for example. Filling up lanes with the shield can be a very valuable thing to do, as long as you don't get Enchantress, and there is very little Enchantress. This guy's just going to sort of do his thing with impunity, be like a 2/6, plus the other ongoing, and that's just good enough. His shield can also win lanes that are closed off with a Blue Marvel buff or a Spectrum buff. So like a Sanctum Sanctorum, for example, is somewhere that his shield can go and actually win. Cosmo's super awesome, but this deck does have enough big stuff at the top end that you don't often get as much out of Cosmo as you would want. I've thought about swapping this for Mobius. It's just, I really think Cosmo's sort of at his best later in the game, and this is a deck that has Thanos, it has Spectrum, it has Blue Marvel, it has Mockingbird. It's got a bunch of stuff that's like pretty expensive. And so it's not always going to be able to reasonably play a Cosmo and catch someone by surprise a lot of the time. So you have to look for like early ways to catch people by surprise with Cosmos. So for example, like there's a hood out there, right? You put the Cosmo in that lane so they can't misery it, things like that. Like you do it to stop various surge procs, things like that. Like you don't get as much out of a Cosmo as other decks playing Cosmo do. The card Killmonger exists, and so that means we play the card Kyera. It is honestly, literally that simple. Wiccan is in here just for value, but also when you do Wiccan, that is your sort of primary snap condition. If you're able to curve into a Wiccan, this deck has so much gas in it that you're probably just going to be able to beat most things that are playing a fair game of Marvel Snap. That's really the, like, this is the spike. This is the power spike of the deck. Larval's all right. Like, there's nothing wrong with a Blue Marvel. It's nice to be able to stack these buffs across things, but you really do need to be rolling downhill to justify him being good. So when you have a bad draw, he like really sucks. Like if you're not playing a bunch of stones, this guy is not doing a bunch of points. Spectrum is pretty solid. Like this is just a very good card. There are definitely situations where she's so much better if you have that extra energy from the Wiccan, because it's very easy to play around one Spectrum, but it's a lot more difficult to play around, say, Goliath Spectrum or Two Stones Spectrum or Dazzler Spectrum. The predictability of her is her biggest hit, but luckily you sort of always have this potential will they, won't they? Are they going to Spectrum? Are they going to Thanos? What's actually happening? And that can get you some wins just on confusion. Thanos staple, absolutely play this in every Thanos deck. Not even really a question. Thanos staple, absolutely play this in every Thanos deck. Not even really a question. All right, y'all, let's jump into some gameplay. I hope you enjoy it. This is the second in what I am calling in my head the Fruits of Mid-Deck Monday series. I'm doing these Mid-Deck Monday streams where I play stuff that like I think is like sort of sub-tier list level and see if there's any potential in it. And I was pretty impressed with this one too. So it's going on the YouTube, and I hope you guys enjoy a look at it. I'm not sure if this is something that people will resonate with. Like, I wonder if people want worse decks than Thanos. But to me, I was actually pretty surprised to find that this deck felt competitive. Like, this is not an archetype I really had in mind. There's a bunch of Killmonger running around. It didn't make sense to me. But when I played it, it felt like it actually just had a decent amount of power, and it wasn't getting like absolutely shenaniganed on by, 16 power Havocs anymore. And so that felt like a much more reasonable space for this deck to exist in. This current metagame is just a little bit nicer to it than the previous one was. And if so many people are relying on Juggernaut in all of these mid-range Juggernaut packages, filling up the board is actually just the thing you want to be doing. And this is one of the best decks in the game at doing that. With all of that said, let's jump into the gameplay. I've been KMBest. You have been phenomenal. Nothing can change that, and I will see you in the next one. Anything I have to do of this concept. Kind of proud Cam didn't make it your mom joke. don't live in your mom. I just visit sometimes. Okay, now I feel bad. Use English streams to train. Now I feel like a dick. Also, guess who's not on again? We're only playing midway decks. That's crazy. Okay, so I mean, they play a demon here, they go to 20. We have 12. We have no additional ways of getting into there. We have, what, 16 additional? 19? I don't know. If they have a bigger guy than 20, we're dead, right? That's a 6, though. We're okay, I think. Yeah, we're okay. We're okay. Nice Infinite.
Knowledge is power.
Hello, so happy.
We did it, baby. No, see, like, that's what we were talking about. A little sussy, I think, perhaps. Come on, dude. That was like 90% of my plan. That was like 90% of my plan was that I couldn't get Killmonger now. Fuck. What the hell is happening? Howdy, KM, howdy. It was real polite of them to stagger on my shield out, but also, I don't know what the fuck this is.
Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man here.
Does this win? I guess the follow-up question is like, loses to Cannonball, right? But nobody ever does that. He might do that. It's totally within his wheelhouse. Because this is my other option. Nice. Fair enough. You use my code at checkout, you will get 50% off. And I seriously believe that Factor is a good deal at 50% off. I do believe my code, unfortunately, does not work in Canada. What a segue. I felt like I did pretty good there, yeah. Do you eat from Factor? Literally, yes. Last time I ordered it, I had the same deal that you guys get, and I was like, this is dope. I had to ask them this time if they give me the same deal, and I literally will order from them. I just wanted to make sure I got the deal too. Why does that activate Raptor? That's a really good question. I don't know. Who up activating the Raptor? Why can't I play? Oh, because I'm not ahead. Right. Yep.
Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man here.
Works. Feels pretty okay to me. I can get cannonballed on the left, but I mostly don't give a shit. Damn, they really went for the cannonball on the left? That seems fucking insane to try to do.
Knowledge is power.
What? Buddy. That ain't it. Any change for Wiccan? I don't have it. No, I mean, like, Thanos decks are Wiccan decks, unfortunately. Unfortunately, Thanos decks are Wiccan decks. Like, that's just a pretty big part of what the card does right now. That's just a pretty big part of what the card does. It's kind of just locked in there.
The universe shall be set right.
I need a 1 or a 2 in 2 draws. We have a bunch of 1s, 6 1s, and 3 2s. That's one of the 1s. Holy fuck. That is quite bad. It's not nightmarish. I still need a 1, a 2, or in this case, also a 3. What do we think about this?
Opponent snapped.
Now I'm feeling a little weird.
Knowledge is power.
Victory.
Time
be set right.
That would have been brutal. Brustal. For the record, I'm prioritizing my potential loss of Space Stone value lower than I would in a different context. But it's just like I am gonna go for it this way. I think we're probably blowing up Strange Academy against an Aranya deck pretty reasonably. Probably gonna go. All right. Can't complain. I can start complaining now. What the hell am I playing against?
Opponent snapped.
This is a Heimdall, right? It's a Heimdall left. Yes? Heimdall left has 12. That 12 right here. 22. Does this still have an ongoing ability if I Spectrum it? Anybody know? That should take us to more than 22,
Knowledge
right?
is power.
I see the way.
Coolio.